Classically, in human neuroscience, we have been forced to use non-invasive methods such as EEG and fMRI because they're safe, they're non-invasive, and you can basically deploy them on anyone that comes into the lab. At some point, I started reading and looking into the clinical interventions that allow you to put electrodes into people's brains.
Often used for stroke, ALS, and epilepsy patients, brain-computer interface devices are also helping neuroscientists eavesdrop on the brain's activity to understand cognition.
That gives us a unique opportunity to study this really high-quality electrical activity from many brain regions simultaneously while the patient is under clinical observation. So it really opens up all sorts of experimental possibilities where, in collaboration with the patient, we study these electrical recordings from the brain to understand how the brain processes emotion, carries out decisions. And the really fundamental departure from, academic studies is that they're implanted for a long period of time.
BCI research has started to reveal how multiple brain regions work in tandem to produce speech, both actual and intended.
Understanding the biology of speech has been one of the biggest mysteries in neuroscience. It's a behavior that's very, very specific to our species. You have this kind of unique opportunity to build a technology that allows you to interface with those parts of the brain to restore communication. It opens the door to answering some very fundamental questions about the nature of how speech and language work in the brain. And specifically, this has to do with recording from areas like Broca's area or the precentral gyrus. That's a really important area for controlling the different parts of our vocal tract, from our lips, the jaw, to the larynx. The middle precentral gyrus appears to have a very central role in the planning and execution of speech. It's not just about the motor control. It has many more complex functions than we realized.
We know that some parts of our premotor and motor cortex enable speech motor articulation. And so if you implant some electrodes in and around that part of the brain, you can read out the planned speech motor movement sequences and basically convert those to speech if a person can't produce speech on their own.
Because BCIs seem to be able to tap into intended speech, researchers are raising privacy concerns.
Because of intended speech, are you really decoding what the person wanted to say or their inner monologue? Those are very different things, right? And it gets to the issues of privacy and how you own your thoughts. The good news is that people are thinking about it, they're discussing it, and there's already some attempts to produce bills of rights for your neural data.
Researchers hope to trace how information transforms at the different levels of speech processing, up to semantics, abstract thought, and emotions, and to do so outside the lab in real-world situations.
So we're trying to understand how those semantic, kind of more high-level amodal meaning areas interact with the language system during language production. For a long time, people have drawn this distinction between abstract and concrete concepts. That distinction has also been questioned, but more broadly, what are the dimensions that organize our meaning representations, right? I think there's really enormous potential to make major discoveries, because then you can start looking at interactions between these different levels of representation and processing, right? From meaning to language to speech motor representations. And that would be incredibly exciting. And so I hope we get to do this kind of work.